What if fear wasn't a stop sign? What if it was actually a signal that you're standing on the edge of something meaningful?
Well, clearly there is a lot to unpack today, so let's get to it on the Wandering But Not Lost podcast. Welcome to Wandering But Not Lost, your online source for finding balance so that you can align, connect, and prosper. And now your hosts, Jen O'Brien and Matt Emerson. Welcome everyone to the WBNL Wandering But Not Lost podcast, where we explore, expand, and elevate. This is episode 357. You can find all those show notes over at WBNLpodcast.com. Jen O'Brien. Today, we're talking about fear. What a lovely topic. The quiet hesitation that keeps us from making the moves we know in our guts. We know in our guts that are right for us. We're going to break down the hesitation wide open, because courage is not something you wait for. It's actually something that you create.
And fear often disguises itself as logic.
Yeah. Maybe
I should wait and see what happens. Or what if I do that and I fail? Or is now really the right time? Wow. That is probably where I hear that the most.
Sure.
In my business and everywhere. Is now really the right time? But that's just your brain doing its job. It's always trying to keep you safe. That ego part of you is your protector, saying, let's be safe. This is what we've always done. You don't need to go outside the lines in the coloring book, right? But here's the truth. Fear tends to show up right before transformation. It's a compass pointing you toward the edge of growth. Fear is resistance, and resistance, that's the weight you push against to become stronger.
Right. So let's just, let's take this, let's bring this home a little bit and talk about, let me tell you a little tale. Because as you know, fear doesn't always come dressed in terror, like, where you also, you go when you hear the word fear. Sometimes it shows up as comfort, surprisingly, as the voice that says, why would you mess with a good thing? What? Why do you want to throw us into the raging pit of inferno, right? And that's exactly what I've heard in my life a number of times. But I just, give two specific examples that kind of happened just, right around the same time, right? The first time, in this little story here is when I was the chief communications officer at a really big, it's the number one independent real estate company in Southern California. And I was happy in that job. And I was at that company for a long time. As a matter of fact, I started my real estate career as an agent there, and then just moved all the way up into corporate and, into the corporate office. And I loved what I did. It was a fun job, and it was very rewarding, and I had a great team around me, and I had a rhythm that worked, and it was very comfortable. But then out of the blue came an offer from an up-and-coming rival new to Southern California, and there was an offer to become the COO of that company. And honestly, it really kind of threw me, and it threw me in a really big way, because it wasn't just an easy, hell yeah, let's go do that. Because in fact, it really rattled me, because the role was, not because the role was bigger, but it wasn't going to be a bigger role. There was going to be more challenge to that. It wasn't my comfort. I was in my little happy comfort, happy place. And, that challenge was real. And, the money was better than I was making, right? It wasn't chump change. So there was that appeal to it. But as we've talked about so many times, when it comes to running a business and how people react to the money itself, that was not the biggest driver. Matter of fact, it was way down on the list of things that were going on there. So I can tell you, from when we talk about I'm sure we've all experienced it, but I can tell, I'm admitting out loud that actually that wasn't the thing that pushed me right there. But still, with all of those, positive things, I still hesitated, because here's the truth, that change is change. And it's, even when it's super shiny and is like a magnet drawing you, it's still scary. So I had to get brutally honest with myself. I had to ask myself this question: was I growing where I was, or was this just getting better at being comfortable? And it's really funny. This all happened around a time we had been training to climb Mount Whitney, and my poor wife and the poor people we were around, literally, like we trained for a good 6 months to climb Whitney.
Wow.
Like 3 months of that, all of this was going on. So it was like every time we went on a training hike, it was like, time for a therapy session. Matt, what's your decision today? It's like,
oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Even when we actually climbed the mountain, It was before I had actually made the decision on what I was going to do. So
how aligned is that?
It was just really cool, because that hike and doing all of that really helped me formulate the decision I was going to make. And we talk about that whole getting out in nature thing a lot. I'm telling you, it absolutely helps you refresh and realign. So that's all there is to that. I took the leap in that, and that role stretched me in ways I never really saw coming, in so many ways that I never expected. It taught me more about leadership, more about culture, more about alignment, since my days when I was working at the Walt Disney Company, which at that point, I don't know if you can say the same thing now, unfortunately, but it used to be really known as the training and leadership excellence, the go-to place for that. So it was a great experience. So I was so glad that I made the shift, even though it was really scary, and I was leaving behind kind of a little bit of a legacy and people that I had been working with for years and years. But then it happened again, because a few years later, we decided that it became clear to me anyway that it was time to kind of move on, because the culture was kind of taking a little shift there, and I didn't always see eye to eye with the people, other people in leadership at the company. Not that there was any big, huge battles or anything. It just, things were changing. You can feel that in your once again, you can feel it in your gut, but walking away from that also wasn't simple, because here I was, in this role that, that I had, made the shift from the other place into, and I had built strong relationships there. That's where I met Jan O'Brien. It was awesome. And in a lot of ways, I helped to shape where the company was going, and I put my little mark in places, as one does when they're in leadership roles around there. So, but it's still something inside me was like, you know what? Time for change. And Jan was going through very similar situation at the time. Was. Different tracks, but anyway, ultimately, Jan and I both left. And then after a while, that's when we formed WBNO Coaching and got more into the wandering but not lost whole theory there. So once again, I faced fear, not in the loud kind of fear, or the terrifying kind of fear, although it was a little bit scary. It was more that whispery kind of fear, right? That are you sure you're ready for this? And the biggest question that always comes up when you're doing this whole, making a change thing is, what if this doesn't work, right? I made the change, but what if it doesn't work? So here's what I've learned. Clarity doesn't really come before the leap. Just always remember that you can get on a direction, you can make a decision, but that whole clarity isn't always there beforehand. It comes after, right? Because you don't build confidence and then act, because it doesn't make sense. You act, and then that confidence will help you and will grow. And you might feel a little bit, like your little wobbly feet in the very beginning, but you were chosen, or you went to that position for a reason, and you can grow from there. So if you're standing on the edge of something right now, just listen to this. Let this be your little nudge. The leap is not going to kill you, but staying stuck, well, that just might.
Wow, that I did not know that parallel of the training and climbing Mount Whitney and going through this massive change. Isn't that is synchronistic? It was happening on purpose. It was really powerful. That's what helped you make that shift, right?
Yep.
So small leaps can really lead to big results. So this fearless action we're talking about doesn't mean reckless action. Matt just really eloquently went through how the process that he went through, and he had to go through all the feelings, and there's a lot of things to consider, and a lot of us will stay in a position because it's secure and it's comfortable, but it's not feeding your soul anymore, or you're not growing. And that's what you just said in a way, right? And then the next thing carries you through to the next level of growth. And here we are now, right? Doing the same thing. So it's not always about leaping off a cliff blindly. It's about making these micro moves in the direction of alignment. Now, even though that was an amazing story, I'm not saying you have to go out and start planning to go climb a mountain, but that's very interesting. Or maybe there's a parallel in a project or something that you're doing that's going to help you make that decision. But simple changes and small little leaps can be things like speaking up in a meeting. Mm-hmm. Have you that when you do something like that, that's where things can start shifting. Okay, I can speak. I could have an old 5 minutes talking about that one.
We could talk about this forever.
That was me speaking up. Yeah. Setting a personal boundary, basically saying, hey, that's not how I'm going to be able to work here, or how it is for me in this relationship. sending that email that you've been avoiding. Now, never send an email in anger or as an immediate response to something that happened. You should always sit on that. We've talked about that before. And I mentioned a little bit ago, bravery, this courage is a muscle. And just like working out your body, the more you use it, working out your brain, the more you use it, the more natural it becomes. So try this, just one bold move each day this week. One thing that's out of your comfort zone. It doesn't have to be really big. It just has to be real.
That's awesome. I love that. Because sometimes fear can get really, really loud in your head. You're always your own worst enemy a lot of the time,
That's
right?
the truth.
And we forget that we have any control at all, but you always have one powerful tool at your fingertips. And this is what that I have learned over the years. And we talk about this on the show quite a bit too, that you have your questions and you have your own reasoning that you can throw into the mix there. So when you're stuck in hesitation, you don't need a pep talk. Usually you need a pattern interrupt because you are in that zone. You're in that, your little space. So I'm going to give you 5 fear shifting questions that you can work with, right? And I love all of these because they can all be really powerful. I don't know if you can put down the list, but they really are. So here's a question to ask you: what's the worst thing that could happen? Start there. Start in the worst case, which I think is probably where most people start anyway. It's like, right? Once you kind of get over like, hey, that's going to be awesome. Oh no. Oh boy, what's the worst thing that can happen here? And you need to say that really, really loud, and you need to name that, put a name on it. And most of the time, it's not it's not a catastrophe, right? And your brain is making, or as big as your brain is making it out to be. So going through and thinking through that process, it takes a lot of that worry and that kind of fear away. Now, let's flip that on the other side. A question you can ask yourself: well, what's the best thing that could happen here, right? So, what's the dream outcome in this situation? The wildly awesome result if things actually go well in the shift, right? Because fear loves to downplay the possibility. So don't let it do that, right? Start thinking about the big time and what it can do and how. And once again, last week we talked a lot about opportunity. That was in the marketplace. There's opportunity in your own career and in your own life. All the time, every day, there's something, right? Third question is, what will it cost me if I don't make this leap? Good question, because that one really hits deep, right? Because safety has its price, right? And then sometimes it's your potential, your joy, which to me is one of the most important things, and your peace of mind. So don't let that happen. Number 4, what would I tell my best friend if they were in my shoes? That's a good one, because you have to remind you of course would build them up, right? You'd remind them of their strengths. You'd call out their greatness. So you please give yourself that same compassion and clarity when you're facing something like that. I love that is a really powerful one, because especially if you're someone that is typically kind of that helper, or the one that's going to help people with their problems, and you're that ear that people listen to. You are always building. You're always telling them that they got what it takes, but you rarely ever give yourself that thing. That's that self-talk. That's that self-talk that comes into your head, right, Jan?
Can I add that's important to the sermon around who's the best friend if they were in my shoes? Because I also find sometimes when you share things with lots of people, or people even in your family or close circles, sometimes you'll get the response based on how they feel.
That's so good.
So I have had experiences of taking leaps, and then I have the people who are more that I love, that are close to me, their fears come up in talking to me, their fears for me, but they're really their own fears. So I want to bring that up. Have discernment about who do you share your big leaps and dreams with, so that they don't, and it's maybe good to hear somebody, which basically they're telling you the number one, what's going to happen if it doesn't work out? Why do you want to leave this safety? That's them projecting, I never would do what you do. Okay.
Yeah. So that's super powerful, because if you're talking to a number of different people, you are going to get different responses back. The 5th one really is, how do you zoom out here for a little bit, and how am I going to feel about this choice in about 10 years? Right. And, that's pretty subjective. Right. But 10 years from now, will you wish you waited, or will you wish you had been braver and done it? There is nothing worse than regret. And, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that. We've talked about that a little bit. I think we need to do a podcast on regret.
You just made me think about that.
That's a good idea, because that is something that everyone faces. These questions don't eliminate the fear, because that's going to be around, right? You just have to learn how you have to control it, right? To expose it for the illusion of control that it really is. So it's so important to do to ask yourself those and really, jump in and analyze that. So, and when fear loses its control, you regain your power, and that's what it's all about. Fear is super tricky. It wears thousands of masks. It wears the doubt mask, the delay mask, distraction. But underneath it all, what was that?
Squirrel, distraction. Look over here.
Yeah, exactly. The distraction's a good one to get you off. Not have to worry about that. But underneath it all, really, it's the same question: what if I'm not ready? That is the underlying question when you're making these big decisions in your life. And let me tell you something. I've heard that. I've learned that the hard and really beautiful way. You won't feel ready. That's the whole point. You're not going to feel ready. But life isn't asking you to be ready. It's asking you to be brave and to really make that step. And remember that every bold move that most people make, and I know that I've made, has come wrapped in uncertainty. You don't really know what the outcome's going to be, right? You're the master of your own destiny, though, and you really need to remember that. And yet, those were the distractions that really helped shape who I am all the way through my life and along the way. Not because they were easy, because they were true. And that's really what it's all about. If you're following your beliefs and you're making decisions are on the course for you, and you're doing your path, it's going to end up being the right decision. Almost 100% of the time. Not saying you don't sometimes make bad decisions, because that just happens too, but you can learn from those as well. So if you're standing at the crossroads staring down a leap that makes your heart pound a little bit, that is really great. It means that it matters. It means that this could be something that could make a big change and take you someplace that you're ready to go, or you might want to go. So don't wait for the fear to vanish, because it's not going to. You need to walk with that fear. You need to let it sit in the passenger seat, but you need to freaking hold the wheel of where your car is driving. So just remember that. It's going to be there. It's going to be your little pal, right? And you can control it and be its little friend. Friend can be your fear. Fear can be your friend. So take that next step. Speak the truth. Say yes, say no. Start the thing, leave the thing, whatever the decision might be. The whole thing is you need to just, make the decision. Your future is waiting on the other side of that hesitation. Just remember that, right? And your life is going to be on pause until you actually make that jump. So remember, whenever you're on that journey, you're never truly lost. You're just wandering your way towards alignment. And that's really all there is to that one. Any final words on that, Jan, before we jump in?
No, that was just beautiful, man. That was just really good stuff.
Yeah. So just, it can be completely immobilizing. And, it can be a scary thing, but if you really, walk through the things we just talked about today, and you make that leap. And I can tell you, I don't really have regrets. Do you have a lot of regrets in your life?
No. So funny, because I just wrote down on this pad of paper, no regrets.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I am super happy and content and feel like I've grown so much in my life, and I would not be where I am right now, sitting here on in front of the screen with Jan O'Brien on this podcast, if all of those decisions I had made in the past, were different.
Exactly, and I feel our message today, that message that you shared in sharing your a couple of the key things in your. That was just two things, right? We have so many. We all have so many. Sure. I think the message that we're sharing is it's never too late. You're not too old. As we sit here, that's my elder for another couple weeks.
It's that 1 month of elderness.
I feel like I've never been more alive and more kind of just aware and awake and having fun and enjoying things, right? Maybe that's what comes when you become the wise elder, right?
It's
you
true.
Go through these stages of life, and we're learning, and some of us don't learn, and we get to keep repeating the lessons until we finally go, okay, I think I got that one. Oh, no, you don't. Look, we're going to throw this one at you. And then you get here and you're reflecting. So there's no regrets, but it's beautiful to say, here we are now. And if you're facing something, then, go back and look at those. Ask those questions. Were very good, very deep, and feel the fear and do it anyway kind of thing. That book comes up a lot in my head when I hear fear. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Take the leap. As long as you're coming from your own alignment and your own clarity, you're doing it for you. and not some outside force, then I think everything exactly lines up as you want to. It's your next step. So what is your next step? Go take it.
Go take it.
Is the message today.
And remember, all of the show notes are over at wbnlpodcast.com. This has been episode 357. Is that right? Yeah, 357.
357!
Yeah. And don't forget to leave a comment or a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single episode.
Get on our email list also.
Yeah, absolutely. And get some other inspirational tidbits throughout your week. So until next time, wander with intention, align with clarity, and here's the thing. Keep moving forward.
Beautiful.
See you next week.